22 minutes after 11 p.m. Central Africa time. If you've just joined us, it is time for us to get into the Book of Persuasion, how you can change people's minds and build, or rather influence their decisions. I think I'm thinking of building by myself here, and influence their decision making while building trust. Joining us in studio is Paul Du Toit. Part 6 is in session, and I must just say, Paul, part 6 for me was exciting. How we, to an extent, use our senses to influence. Right?
Sure thing.
And we start off with a visual context, right? Now, there are studies that show that smiling women get more sales.
Yeah, so a lady called Marianne Bertrand in 2010 did some research with regard to people doing home loan applications. And they would get a glossy brochure with pictures on it. Yeah. And they found that if there was a man on the brochure, or a child, or what have you, it had no impact really on, in terms of persuasiveness, whether people would go with that bank or building society or not. Yeah. When there was a woman on and she was frowning or just had a neutral expression, it also had no impact. But they found that when it was a smiling woman, it was the equivalent of having a 25% reduction in the interest rate in terms of its power. Now, let me just put that into perspective. Let's say the normal home loan rate is 8%. Yeah. Now, it would have the equivalent power at 8% that a reduction from 8 down to 6% would have, which is a huge amount on your home loan. Yeah. Now, another way of looking at it is when people are doing their presentations and they're using PowerPoint. As technology has become more sophisticated and we've had data projectors and that, you'd think that slideshows would get better and better. Well, they've got worse because people just put a whole lot of rubbish on the screen. Yeah. And the rule is very simple. One picture, it must be a good picture and it must relate to what you're talking about. I mean, it doesn't have to be too obvious, but it mustn't detract from the message that you're trying to put across, because the visual impact is really important. Now, there was a study done by 3 psychologists, Stolovich, Keeps, and Clark, I think it was, and they found that from the time we wake up in the morning till the time we go to bed at night, our most dominant sense by far is sight. In fact, 83% of the information we take in on a normal day, obviously it varies from day to day, but on a normal day is through our sight, and 11% through our ears, and the other 3 senses only get 6%. So that is how important sight is, and how important it is to use the right images and to even attire yourself properly. It's just more persuasive. So if you walk into a shop to return something and you're dressed in a suit, you're treat you a lot more seriously than if you're in a sloppy tracksuit. Yeah.
That is fair. This element of sight for me, I think, is rather interesting because your book cover was influenced by it. Could you allow me, please, to?
Absolutely. There you go.
So you have a smiling lady here.
That's exactly right. So just like you had to read through the first 5 parts until you got to part 6. Yeah. The first chapter in part 6 is about the smiling lady. Yeah. And of course, the cup of coffee there is about the priming through the aroma. So the cover actually means something. It isn't just a random cover.
Walk us through what it means.
Well, it just means quite simply that if the woman is smiling, there's a better chance that somebody is going to pick up the book and want to read it if they see the whole cover. Yeah. But here's the problem in a bookshop, is that all you usually see is the spine. Yes. So the spine has got to be clear enough for you to be able to see what it's all about. Otherwise, you're not likely to pick it up. And
yours, are you confident with this spine?
Yes, but I think the one problem that I have is that it's not a big book. Yeah. Which is very good for the reader, because today people want to read shorter books. But because it's not a big book, it's not thick. So it's less likely that you're going to see it unless someone showcases the actual cover. But when they see the cover, because of the unusual colors, there's a bit of purple in there, what have you. And it's a smiling, mature lady. Yeah. So it's not like a dolly bird. It's it's an older lady, so it's got that credibility.
That is fair. The voice there of Paul Du Toit joining us this evening. We are discussing this beautiful book, the Book of Persuasion, how you can change people's minds and influence their decisions while building trust. My question to you is, have we persuaded you to buy the book by virtue of the cover alone? Find me on WhatsApp and let me know all about it. +278 288 6684. Let's talk about body language.
Yeah, boy.
Right? Body language is such an important one. Because I feel like if you do too much, you might repel someone. But too little gives the assumption that you're not interested.
Well, it's got to be appropriate for the context.
Yeah.
And everything about persuasion really is about context, about setting context properly. Last week we spoke about the word imagine.
Yeah.
So just by using the word imagine, you can take somebody from where they are to where it is that you want them to be. So if I had to say to you, imagine you were sitting in a studio with a microphone in front of you and 3 cameras on you, I mean, it's unlikely you're going to be thinking about dolphins jumping around in the ocean, because I've told you to imagine this particular scene. So just by doing that, you're actually changing the direction in which people are going. Now, body language effectively is part of priming, really. So there are all kinds of different things that you can do with your body language. I mean, the one, I think we were chatting about it a little bit earlier on, is using touch. Now, touch is quite risky, particularly for men to use, because you can't just go around grabbing people or slapping them on the back, which is kind of touch that men often use.
Yeah.
But women instinctively have an ability to use touch simply by touching the wrist of someone to calm them down or make them feel a little bit more relaxed or less intimidated.
Yeah.
And it can have a tremendous effect. If you touch the wrist and then request that somebody does something, you've got a far greater chance that it's going to happen if you don't touch the wrist. But now men can't go around touching the wrist. So it again depends whether you're a man or a woman. So what men often do is they might, give the other man a gentle slap on the shoulder. But then a man can't really do that to a woman unless he knows her well. So the effect of touch, skin on skin, the most famous one is obviously the handshake, which came about many centuries ago when 2 knights would come out of the dark, and in order to indicate that you weren't an enemy or that you weren't armed, you'd hold up your right hand unarmed, and you'd approach the person, and then you'd grasp one another's arms, which ended up then being a handshake. So it shows I'm coming in friendship. So that immediately struck up a bond between the two of you, and then you know that you weren't being threatened. So touch, the handshake, they're all important persuasive tools.
Sure. And do you think there is a context where touch is completely inappropriate?
Well, yeah. I mean, just imagine someone coming and ruffling your hair.
I mean, I don't mean like that. I mean in conversation.
Oh, in conversation.
Yes. So you are trying to persuade someone, and let's say let's make it as unusual as possible. First encounter.
Yeah. So the first encounter you can shake hands, but I think for starters, you need to be slightly aware of cultural norms.
Yeah.
So for instance, let's say it's a Chinese person.
Yeah.
It's a fairly gentle handshake. It lingers a little bit, and then you take it away.
Yeah.
Very much like in the African culture, you might also keep holding the person's hand for a while you're initiating the conversation.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with an Afrikaner, and I'm specifically saying a white Afrikaner, it's normally a firm handshake, and you let it go afterwards.
Okay.
So it is completely different. If you have an Afrikaner and he shakes the hand of an African gentleman, and he squeezes the hand very hard, it's perceived as being aggressive.
That is true.
So there are things that can be very inappropriate. So one must use touch in the context of who you are using the touch with.
Let's talk about voice, the power of voice.
Well,
right? I love the analogy that you made. The first sets of sounds you'll hear, and that you will sort of hear repetitively, is your mom's. It's gentle, it's soft, it's warm. where we think that getting passionate about something in conversation means I will persuade you to see my route or my way, in actual fact is repelling people. And I think a lot of us don't understand that. Where you are shouting and it's not necessarily at the person, it's more so your own passions rising.
Yes.
And you'll raise your voice and you'll speak loud and you've lost the person.
Well, persuasion is about relating to people, and relating is more about listening. So when you're going to use your voice, you want to use it in such a way that it's going to have the desired effect. Now, the fact of the matter is that our voices are incredible. They are such finely tuned instruments. You can do all kinds of things with your voice. The fact that you're on radio or doing podcasts is because you've mastered the art of using your voice effectively.
Yeah.
So our voices help us to get the kind of message across that we want to. In actual fact, it's the tone of our voice, especially initially in a meeting, more than what we're saying, that we're going to be judged on. Because people get first impressions more from the tone of the person's voice. Obviously, as time goes on, and there's time for the content to sink in, we then start engaging the content. We haven't got time in the first 5 to 10 seconds because there's not enough time to hear the content. So it's the warmth, it's the way you speak, and in fact, to a large extent, it's the amount that you speak that also matters. So good salespeople know that they shouldn't be speaking more than a third of the time. They should actually spend 2/3 of the time listening, because that's where you get information about the needs and the requirements of your customer.
There's an example you made. There's a salesman who locked in a deal and then continued to speak for 16 minutes after.
Yeah, so I just used the example of a car salesman. So he's basically saying, well, this seems to be exactly the same model. Are you happy with this color? So the guy says, yeah, like this or ice white will be absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Now, at that stage, what the salesman should do is stop and just take out his pen and start filling in the paperwork. But in this case, the salesman kept talking for 16 minutes. And eventually the guy said, well, all right, it sounds great. Let me just think about it and I'll go talk to my wife and come back to you. Well, I bet he didn't come back to the sales room again, because what had happened is that the salesman had sold it and then he bought it back again, which is a bit of a disaster. So we need to learn, if we're selling, and I mean, persuasion is not only about selling, but if we are selling, once we've got that buying signal and we know that the person has enough information to make the decision, stop talking and take the order.
What makes us talk more?
Insecurity. Pure and simple. And in fact, it's interesting that you should ask that, but because when you get question time in a presentation, very often the presenter is feeling, well, they are target practice now because the audience can ask them questions. So when asked a question, they spend too much time answering. Now, the ideal time to answer a question is somewhere between 15 and 35 seconds. And if you go outside of that, if you do less than 15 seconds, it sounds a little bit curt. If you go over that, it sounds like you're just trying to justify what you said previously because you didn't engage your brain before you opened your mouth.
Oops. Oops. 36 minutes after 11 p.m. Central African time. We are still in conversation with Paul Du Toit, who is the author of the Book of Persuasion, How You Can Change People's Minds and Influence Their Decisions While Building Trust. If you have questions, find us on WhatsApp, +27 83 288 6684. Paul, I want to talk about the balance between speaking and listening, but also making sure that you're heard. Because toward the end of the book, you sort of address two crowds. You speak to the leaders who need to listen to their flock, and we'll get to that. When can the herd overturn a decision made or the vision for whatever it is we're trying to do? How do you balance listening and being heard? And I think that's a general struggle for a lot of people, where it's, I want to listen to you, but I realize that when I listen to you, that's your biggest expectation, that I'll listen only.
Okay, so the first thing is, whenever you're interacting with anybody, is you have to be clear about your objective. And connection is about understanding the other person's space. So when we understand their space and their needs, it is easier to relate to them. But the only way we can understand is by listening to them. In other words, giving them enough air. But there are certain skills to listening. Now, what we tend to do naturally is that in a conversation, particularly if it's a topic that we feel passionately about, we tend to want to speak too much, as opposed to trying to find out what the other person feels or thinks, or so that we can relate to them and actually hone in on their point of view as well. This also speaks to agreement or disagreement. We can change people's minds even if we don't agree with them by initially showing understanding for their point of view.
Yeah.
But the only way one can do that is if one listens properly and tries to understand, and here's the word again, context. Try and understand the context from where they're coming. So we need to try and balance it out by ideally speaking a little bit less and rather listening more.
Let's talk about the 11 I suppose, cues you give us, 11 things that we can practice during a conversation. I was laughing at a few.
Yeah.
Right? Because those are dismissed on radio. You're actually not allowed to do that on radio. And we still do them because it presents a better conversation with the guest. So when you respond to the guest's statement, when you say, yes, that's frowned upon on radio. However, I've seen that you get more interaction from the guest when you are showing them that you're present. However, it's not about radio. Let's go through those 11.
Well, I've noticed that you've done that with all our interviews. You've really... I've kind of felt that there's been a connection immediately as we've been discussing things, because so let's start off with, so there are 11 things here, and obviously I can't remember each one, but you make eye contact, and very often you lean in to show interest, particularly if there's a particular point. But then on radio you've got to be careful, because then you're changing. So if I come too close to the microphone, then I start getting too loud. Yeah. So you lean in a bit. And then the point is to listen intently to the content of what they are saying. It's no use if you are busy preparing your answer and actually not listening. And particularly if you're in a question-answer scenario, you've got to listen carefully to the question and try and understand not only the content of what they're saying, but also the context. So you tune into the context of what's being said, in other words, how they're saying it. You nod and murmur appropriately, just like you've been doing now, and whatever it is. And then there might even be words that you repeat. Yeah. So they might have said something like I said the word repeat. So you might just say repeat, just to show that you're with me. So you repeat phrases in a questioning manner, thereby mirroring their words. And then if you're sitting with them in a restaurant or something and your phone starts buzzing, you don't look down at the phone. You keep looking, because it's that distraction that people immediately get the view, well, the phone's more important than I am. Yeah. And our devices are terrible in terms of distracting us from the conversation that we're having with someone. I mean, you have a couple at a restaurant and they keep looking at their phones all the time. It's clear they're not properly engaged. So we should try and block out any distractions. Even if there's interesting stuff happening behind the person, block it out. Focus on that person. And then don't fidget, scratch, fiddle around. Just keep still and engaged. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, avoid preparing your next statement. So there are actually 11 things sitting in there on page 143.
It is 41 minutes after 11 p.m. Central African time. A quick breather, and then we wrap up conversations with Paul.
The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
I Show Speed, often called Speed, who is a popular American YouTuber and live streamer known for his high-energy personality, loud reactions, and unpredictable humor. He visited Ethiopia, and he was shocked what he found out actually when he got to Ethiopia. He got to find out that, they don't use the Gregorian calendar. That is, we are in 2026 right now. And he got to find out they are in 2018.
2018.
Now you trolling me.
That's 2026.
No.
It ain't 2026. Wait, hold on. Wait, we in the past? Ronaldo is still in Real Madrid. Everything is in the past here.
Oh man, how shocked the speed was.
He went back in time. Saturday and Sunday mornings belong to the Morning Switch. 3 to 6 a.m. Central African Time. Africa's heart beats one story at a time. On African Diaries with Shayla.
18 minutes before midnight, we are still in conversation with renowned speaker and author, that is Paul Du Toit, and he joins us to walk us through this beautiful book, the Book of Persuasion, how you can change people's minds and influence their decisions while building trust. Paul, I want us to get into, let's start off with the herd, because I think that that's a rather controversial one.
Yeah.
I do think that we buy greatly into hierarchy.
Yeah.
And we only sort of see the power of everybody who's under when something is wrong.
Yeah, so authority is very important, and we are primed to follow authority and to listen to the chief or the manager or whoever we report to. But in teams, although it's been believed for a long time that, you know, if you follow the geese example with them flying in a V, we always thought that they followed the lead of the goose that's at the front. The reality is that, firstly, the leadership changes from time to time as the lead one gets tired, because it's a lot harder being at the front.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing that I've noticed as a scuba diver, so I'm down at 18 meters or something, and there's a whole bunch of shimmering big eye snappers, and they get distracted by something, but just one fish moves and the rest all move in unison. So it's not one at the front. The point being quite simply that in a team, now if I'm going back to the workplace, in a team in the workplace, the leader does not know everything. The leader is the leader because they shone at a particular skill. So the CEO could be an auditor, or he could be a ex-sales manager, or whatever the case may be. The point is that you have a team because there are individuals in the team that have individual skills that contribute towards the success of the team. So the point is, in any given situation, any member of the team could be responsible for the team changing direction, because this is effectively what happens in nature. So the point is, we are primed to follow the herd, but the herd might not necessarily go where the leader expects it to go. And one of the reasons for that is that you have positional leaders, but you also have influential leaders. And very often the influential leader is not necessarily the positional leader.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. How would you define an influential leader?
Just somebody who has persuasive and influential talents. So they have mastered the art of persuasion, and even though they haven't been given the promotion to be the leader, if the leader's smart, they will identify that they get the buy-in from that person. And if they get the buy-in from that person, they've actually got the whole team, because that's the influential person. And this is where leadership comes in as opposed to simply management. Managers manage what they think is in front of them. A leader has insights into the various different strengths of people in a team, and they work with those strengths. They don't try and make everybody the same, because everyone is not the same. Teams are made up of individuals with individual strengths, so you tap into those people. So the point very simply is, the herd will change direction, not only just because the leader made it happen. There might be another member of the team. So the message there quite simply is, if you have expertise in a particular area that is under discussion, don't keep your mouth shut. Speak up, because you might be making a big difference for that team.
Yeah. You spoke about the word priming.
Yes.
Give us context.
Okay, so everything around persuasion has really got to do with priming. And today we're talking about the senses. The senses are the things that affect priming. So, for instance, the example of walking into a convenience store, smelling the fresh rolls baking, and you didn't have it on the list, but you walked out with 6 rolls. So there your nasal passages were primed.
Yeah.
But it's not only the nasal passages, it might also be the ears. So you go into a bottle store and they're having a promotion of French wine. So they're playing French music. They've got a big photograph up of a French vineyard. They've got the French wines on display. And even though they double the price, you walk out with 6 bottles of French wine that you won't, because you've actually been primed.
Yeah.
They prime us by in those queues at we had that example previously.
Yes.
Is they put all these other little tasty goodies like packets of chips and what have you, and you end up putting things in your trolley that you weren't going to buy anyway because you happen to just see them. So these are all methods of priming, and priming effectively is about creating context. And if you want to persuade, just about everything you do, whether it's the use of words, whether it's mirroring, it all has to do with creating the correct context in order to set up priming.
Sure. I think as a parting shot, how do we prime people before we speak? There is a posture you speak of in the book, the way you walk in, the presence. We talked about the way you look like being important.
Yeah.
And so what are some visual, and I suppose it remains visual, right, that you can use to prime your audience?
Okay, so I think firstly you've got to have posture.
Yeah.
So when you walk into a room, have your shoulders back, hold your head up high, make sure you're dressed appropriately for the occasion, put a smile on your face. When you speak confidently, and you can even influence without saying a word. And there was an example that I use in the book about speaking to at the card division of a big bank. They had 650 employees, but the auditorium could only take 150 people. So I had to deliver the same speech 4 times. So once the one morning, and then that afternoon, then I came back the next day and morning, afternoon again. So I delivered it 4 times. And the first one went really well. The place was packed. People were sitting in the aisles and what have you. So it was like all the tickets were sold out.
Yeah.
So I think at lunchtime, they'd gone and spoken to their colleagues that were coming in and saying, oh, that was great and what have you. So I walk in the afternoon and they're all sitting there waiting, and there's this bit of a chatter, and I get introduced, Mr. Paul Du Toit, and I walk on, and there's the silence, and I just stared at them without saying a word. And after 8 seconds, someone just giggled, and it just set them off. And they were roaring with laughter for about 15 seconds, and then eventually they quietened down. And I said, "What's so funny?" And off they went again. It was about a minute and a half before we had order and I could actually stop, but there was such a vibe. So the point really, very simply, is you should have the posture. You should show how you're feeling, because people have this amazing ability to pick up nuances just by the way we look. The fact that you've probably said to somebody at some stage, "You look tired." I mean, how did you figure that out? It's not like they were sitting with a funny grimace on their face. It was just a very subtle thing.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to pick up if someone is feeling confident. So you need to prime yourself up front before you have a meeting, before you do a presentation. Get up there and look confident and have the right expression that fits in with what you're talking about. So if you're phoning somebody, if you're the bank manager and you're phoning somebody to tell them you're going to take away their overdraft, you don't sort of phone them and say, "Hey there, Shayla. Hey, it's the bank manager. Just by the way, we're going to be taking away your overdraft." That's a bit inappropriate.
Yeah.
So it must be appropriate to the context of the meeting that you're going to be having with that person.
Sure. 9 minutes before the show comes to an end, and this is how we complete the book. If you could kindly raise it up for us one more time.
There it is.
Beautiful book there, The Book of Persuasion, how you can change people's minds and influence their decisions while building trust. I believe the website is
Presentation skills, one word, .co.za.
I was about to say presentation speaker. Wait a minute, Shayla. Presentationskills.co.za.
And then you can just put a /shop and you'll get straight to the page.
Ah, lovely. Mr. Paul, this has been a pleasure. Unpacking this book with you. I am going to read it 2 to 3 times because I think there's some valuable insights that I can pick up from there.
Fantastic. And thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It is time for us to wrap up the show. But before we do that, we need to touch base with Morris Touch. For now, a quick breather.